There was one other one, Sarah.
Tables.
We've heard from our manager about the fact that having picnic tables here in South Beach, I love picnic tables, and it just speaks to RV parks to have picnic tables. And two things came to mind when I started thinking about these. Are they going to be attached to something? Because I don't want these picnic tables to become the shopping carts at South Beach. So there's that, because I know people that collect picnic tables. And then the more important thing is the money. I don't recall this being an approved budget item, and here we are raising fees and trying to figure out the big picture and the budget coming up. There's a lot going on. I'd like to see us concentrate on getting the budget documents done, and this all of a sudden came up as another $17,000 we're spending all of a sudden without a very robust discussion about it. I've never seen a picture of them. I don't know what our department heads think of it. I got, again, very little information about this. And I just, and another question on this is this monies that is of the discretion of the manager to spend, or is it something that we have review over and oversight on?
Doug, do you want to answer that question?
Particular item, I do have a number of things I'd like to say.
Okay.
That particular item, all of these items that are on here, I was given instructions at various times by various commissioners, listened to all the feedback I had from the commissioners, was given a direction and said, do that, make it happen. So I wrote the things up, and that's why they're there. And if you don't want them, we'll take them off. Up to you.
Okay. I remember you talking about the picnic tables at the last meeting, and it seems like I remember the previous port manager talking about it, but I can't remember exactly. Does anybody else recall that or remember that?
I just heard Doug had mentioned.
You do have a great RV park. And I specifically told them when these come in, don't put one at my site. I don't have any time to be there anyway.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to look like it was any kind of favoritism. You need picnic tables in an RV site. I can't hardly think of any I've stayed in that don't have them.
Yeah.
You're coming up to your summer season. Now's the time to put them in, I would suggest. But it's up to you. We'll do whatever you want.
So, comments? Walter?
I think that having picnic tables would be a good idea, but I would like to see pictures of them first.
Okay.
And see what they look like, and are these the only ones out there? Is there a cheaper alternative? And does the staff have a recommendation?
Along
Yes.
the lines of what Walter said, when there's a purchase decision, just seeing what the options are, costs, pros, cons, just something brief. So.
Okay.
I guess I know this was mentioned, I think, in the last meeting about pursuing picnic tables, and the RV park's been a great benefit to the port. However, early on when I first got here, that there was also a push to build a new building for the port staff, and there was a bunch of money that was available, but it just wasn't the right time. There were too many other things that the port had to do. We've heard a lot of comments in the audience, and we've all walked the docks and seen things that need to be happening. I guess what I'm looking at now that I see this number is it really in the best interest of the port to shell out $17,000 for the RV park that's pretty well committed? Not that it couldn't be better, but I guess the question is can we spend $17,000 differently in the port right now?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we could buy a couple of pylons. We can fix a few rub rails. We can fix a few more whalers. I just wonder if this is the right time for buying picnic benches as opposed to fixing the electrical situation.
Well, we have that out on bid right now. It's on the website. But yes,
just an example.
I do agree, though. It's we can buy those things next year when the time comes.
Okay.
The RV park's roughly fully booked about 6 months of the year, so it's not going to change that. And picnic tables.
And yeah, I'm supportive of it, of course, but again, I think from my perspective, if I had $17,000, I'd just assume put it someplace else.
Okay. All right. We're going to pull that one.
Well, that was just my thought.
Well, no,
I appreciate it, but
consensus. There was one other one. I'm sorry because I'm looking at two different agendas. I had one that was highlighted and
It was number 2, got moved on to the new business. So we're done with consent calendar, full approved everything.
okay. So now we are at, hold on a minute.
Old business.
Old business, remove consent, information only. Jeff Lackey had requested something on there. Jeff, did you want to say anything about item B?
I did.
Okay.
I have a potential conflicts of interest as my father-in-law owns 2 vessels that does use port mortgage and services. The document in the meeting packet has rationale for not proceeding with the June 2017 log shipping deal. It is my observation of the facts. The reason for making the document is twofold. One, to provide any interested parties with this qualitative and quantitative explanation. And 2, to highlight and learn from the shortcomings of this past deal in order to better prepare and follow through on any future deals. In short, let's don't repeat the same mistakes. 2 major reasons for not proceeding with the deal are: 1, in taking all costs and risk into account, the port would likely lose money indefinitely. 2, the deal would cede control of the majority of the terminal for up to 20 years and impede pursuing other business opportunities that would be more profitable for the port. Basing the analysis on reasonable costs and recognizing historical market volatility, at 5 ships per year, the port loses $377,000 per year on the deal until years 15 and 16, when it loses $351,000 and $209,000 respectively. There are also potential pitfalls for the future of log export markets, including trade conflicts, geopolitical conflicts, and domestic economic issues. And 2 prerequisites that should precede any consideration of such a deal. 1 is proactive legal review to protect the port, both financially and legally, under different future scenarios. And 2 is logistical integration planning for current and possible future users, looking at impacts to finances and community. In summary, the 2017 log export deal was a bad one with huge risk, millions in debt, legal obligations to others for up to 20 years, no guarantees for shipments, losses into the hundreds of thousands, possibly millions, would impede other opportunities, and was not designed with the proactive legal reviews or logistic integration planning. And this deal fails on multiple counts. It would seem reasonable that any proponent of shipping in Newport would want an analysis on the failings of the previous deal in order to increase chances of success in any future deals. A frank and fair look back on lessons learned in the 2017 deal is essentially a moving forward so that the interests of the port of Newport and the people of Newport can be protected. And that concludes my comments.
Okay. I think, Stuart, you
Well,
had a question.
I just wanted to also mention that, one, I really didn't think that this should be on the agenda. I think it's important to reiterate, because I think it does look backwards. I think it's important to reiterate what Jeff did mention, which this doesn't represent the board. It represents Jeff's opinion about how things went. There's lots of other documentation, other reports that were provided. I will say that the vote that was taken in July was a vote, and I stood here and said, is it really something that is so bad that we were going to refuse to even continue to negotiate, even throw out a counter proposal, a Hail Mary, anything that might completely sway the whole thing in another direction? But the vote was to simply stop talking. And to me, that was incredibly frustrating. I think we had an opportunity here that wasn't perfect. But we also had an opportunity to throw out what we thought was perfect. And we didn't even do that. We just said, we're stopping, we're not talking anymore. And I think that was a lost opportunity. I would say that going forward, I mentioned this to you, Patricia, earlier, I still would like us to have, not only with the commission, but with the community again, a work session that's dedicated to discussing again the operational parameters of the international terminal. Mm-hmm. We tried to do this before and it was sort of turned more towards the finance end of things. I think we need to start this dialogue again, and I think by doing that we're going to more clearly articulate what this port can or can't do as it relates to shipping at the international terminal, as well as the use of that terminal for the fishing community. We have to come to grips with whatever the hell it is we want to do with it. Right now, I think it's ambiguous, and it doesn't give shipping an opportunity to even know what we have available, and if it's reliable enough, if they cut a deal, if it's really going to be available. And the same thing to the fishing community. You know, are they going to say, hey, well, it's time for me to rebuild my main, and I'm going to show up there, and then I got to get out of there because a big ship's going to show up? I think we need to start this dialogue again, establish it, post it, make it crystal clear for everybody, and then I think the doors are much more open and clear for everybody. And I think at least we need to start that dialogue in another work session if we're going to start getting the international terminal going again.
Okay. Yes, Sarah.
I agree with Stuart that the operations plan we've talked about since this was dropped, and the ad hoc committee for the terminal user group was way after the fact, and there was no operational plan. And so we don't want to, that is an obvious mistake that you can't expect everyone to jump in after everything's already been decided. And as far as I understood it, as an incoming commissioner who was in the audience and read everything, and was everything, the original MOU in March, all of these iterations of how many shipments, how much money. It came down to, okay, what is Sylvan going to do? Let's hear from them. We had heard from the other 2, 3. It was a big, complicated, lots of players. And Sylvan was the important person that was going to ship. And there was 20 years of the west end of the dock is what they said, and that was like the last iteration from them, as I understood it. Every meeting I went to and everything I read, that was the final word, and there were no guarantees of logs, and it was being portrayed more as a fisherman against loggers and all of that, which it never was. And I had Kevin Greenwood come to my office before I was a commissioner, and the Connect Oregon grant didn't go through. And he told me, he says, I don't know where shipping's ever going to happen. We lost Connect Oregon, and it's just over. And so this other very thoughtful, well, let's try to save it, was kind of trying to save something that had died. And it didn't get rolled out well. There was an MOU with no discussion in the fishing industry. And then this final thing that even Nurse Sylvan said they needed the west end of the dock for 20 years. And that's what I recall. I don't per se like going backwards in time either. But we get a lot of questions on that, and I think it's good to explain it to people what happened. And we certainly want to diversify, and we certainly want to use the terminals to its full potential, and I agree with Stuart 100% that we need to start getting this operation plan going. And that's just what I recall of this event.
Okay. Walter, did you?
I just think we really went backwards with this. It was not a good idea. I will say that, as the last commissioner standing from when this first started, David's in the back, this has been going on since 2012. We have been trying to get something going at that terminal, and we still need to. The idea was not to displace anybody. I think we can see from all of the comments here tonight that what the port has needed to do up there for many years is to bring a new string of revenue in. And this is what the shipping will do. We cannot keep squeezing our revenue producers now until they have nothing else to give, and that's what we're facing right now. A couple things were said about we were not going to give control of the dock to Sylvan. They were going to be renting the dock and using it to use it as they see fit for their business, the same way the fishermen use it for theirs. The only thing that we were going to be leasing for 20 years was that 9 acres. We were not going to give exclusive use of that west terminal to anybody at any time. So I'd just like to clear that up. Okay. I have a lot of things I could say, but there's a lot of other reports done. Commissioners for many years supported this project and going forward. So, and not to beat a dead horse, I would just say that the new commissioners should go back, and so we don't revisit history, look at what we were handed to for the last 8 years as far as doing things at the terminal. All the reports that were given, the Beckett report, we have 2 analyses, one done by the state. We have one that we did for the Tiger grant, and then we also had one that was done in 2012. Take a look at that take a look at the 35 people that supported the terminal, many of the fishing groups, many of, unfortunately, some companies aren't in business now, and also just realize that some of the people we were going to partner with had moved on. Tevan has sold some of their equipment they were going to bring up here. I don't know if they're willing to purchase it back. We now have a log sorting yard that has opened up in Albany that is now shipping out logs out of Lincoln County. So that's revenue that we're losing. Stimson Lumber, who was going to be barging lumber potentially out of here, they're now railing it up to Rainier. So by not doing some of these things, and I see barging as a rational venue to be pursuing, because when we first started the log export, people came out against the log exports. The one thing that they could wrap their hands around was finished lumber, and so now we had a potential finished lumber coming out of here, and now we don't have that. So I don't see it as moving people out. I see it as lost opportunity and lost revenue, as Mr. Fogarty brought up. So I think that we do need to move forward. We do need to reach out to these people and bring some new revenue in, bring a new stream in, bring someone else who's willing to write checks for us. We can't keep asking these people for more money.
Okay. Any other comments? Yes, Jeff.
I just wanted to agree with Stuart on one thing and disagree with one thing. I agree with you on let's start talking again. I agree with that. I want to disagree on that we took a vote and stopped talking. I believe we took a vote, if my recollection is correct. Less than a week later, there was a meeting scheduled with about the Tiger Grant, and we either had to be ready for shovels to turn or be done. There wasn't time for a renegotiation, if my recollection is correct, at that point. So,
Okay.
And I do agree, if we can get shipping, as long as it makes sense for the Port of Newport and the people of Newport, let's start talking.
Okay.
Patricia, what's your
Yes.
thoughts on it?
I'm pretty numb about it. I mean, there was a lot of interaction, and I don't know if everybody remembers what my concerns and Commissioner Beck's concerns were. We didn't even really get as far as to the contract. We were looking at the numbers. And in my viewpoint, and that of many others, that I respect their opinion greatly, the numbers weren't working. And so that was my reasoning. But that, again, like you said, that's in the past. And, we want to move forward. I think that, Doug is primed. He brings an outside vision, and he understands our constraints. And I think that it'll be very helpful moving forward and stuff. So that's about it.
So what about my suggestion for the work session, scheduling work session for
I have no
beginning
problem
this
with
dialogue?
that. I have no problem. And you're right. We did put the finances ahead because we wanted to look. We wanted to get our finances in order. We wanted to see where we were with the international terminal. I mean, saying commingled finances was just an understatement. I mean, there was just so much money flowing in one place and going here, and nobody could really give me a direct answer. This was last year. So having Todd Kimball come in, he started to make a genuine effort to get, things seated in the correct place. Because I truly believe that you need to know where your money is. You need to know where your income and expense is before you develop a plan. And I think we all agreed upon that, and that was what was given to Todd. So, and he's done a lot of that, and I believe it's done. Is that correct?
Principally, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the next step, is to go ahead and start having a work session. I have no problem with that whatsoever. I think it's a great idea.
So, and again, focus of this work session is to start talking about developing a very clear understanding about how we're going to schedule and how we're going to operate the terminal. It's looking at what currently we have on the books, having a discussion about what might need to be revised if we're simply not following what's on the books. We need to update that. We need a policy 2.0, and I think everybody here needs to be a part of that. And it's probably going to take more than one session.
Yeah.
But we need to get it rolling.
I agree.
So
We can set that up.
May?
I have no... May? Yeah. Budget time, sure. This is loaded on,
there's never going to be a
There is not a pretty time.
And right now, that is one of the biggest potential opportunities for revenue. And it's a good segue into this. It's like we can't tax our way out of a situation. And we're not going to solve the port's problems by increasing the rates for, resident seniors by 200%. The international terminal has to be developed in some form or another,
I agree.
in consultation with the halls as well.
So Doug, maybe you can look at your calendar and start penciling in a work session, separate from our normal budget stuff that we have planned, which,
Now, with the budget session, what's left of it isn't going to be all that long, would it? Would be out of realms to say this should be the week after that, or do you want it to happen during that?
What I would suggest is we need a dedicated work session for it, not dovetailed into anything else. So
so
however
just
that works,
specifically on that.
that would be my suggestion at least.
As soon as we wrap up budgeting, then immediately move into this. Is that what I'm hearing?
We got to get it rolling, yes, in my opinion.
Okay, yes, Sarah.
I think the budget takes priority right now. And I, from our last half
Yeah.
stuff, and I think that we need to really not just show up at a work session. Okay, this is a work session for operational. There's quite a bit of legwork that has to be done, and I don't know how we get that done as to how we start the operation.
Well, I can suggest that I think what we do is develop a draft agenda that brings up a few of these things, and we start tackling the
Shipping
documents that are already out there and get it out
We've got
there.
to do the agendas.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with that.
President and the manager individually is.
I had the budget schedule here, and I don't know what happened to it.
So maybe Doug
But-
can send out either a doodle poll or something, see what works for everybody, but I just encourage us to get moving on this thing. There's never going to be a good time. We got to get
I agree.
moving.
Okay,
Take care.
all right, sounds good. No, I had a budget schedule, had all the dates and everything, so anyway. Okay, so next on our list, draft resolution, setting fees, charges for fiscal year 2018, 2019. So, these are proposed. These are not going to be voted on tonight. I suggest that we need to have a meeting on this. And you talk about having something specific for the international terminals. I think we do need to have, I think we all need to digest what our constituents have said to us today. I think it's very, very important. There's some very valid comments that were made, and we need to take it very, very seriously. So my suggestion would be if you want to make some comments on percentages now, you can. I just would rather look at this again after what I've seen, what I've heard, and then come up with some material. But
One of the problems
Go ahead.
that we've seen here, and that I think people have expressed, is that we've seen 5 different versions of this thing. I mean, it keeps getting rifled around. And, I agree with you. I think each commissioner needs to take what they've heard here, as well as any input and feedback from other people as well. But we need to, before we keep farming out versions of this thing, on some level, I think we need to put together something that we genuinely want people's opinions on, and not something that we're going to have change rapidly, because it's just confusing. It's confusing me, to be totally honest with you. I had a lot of comments on one of them, and then I got another email that said, whoops, we changed it based on some things. So we've gone from a very robust increases to more moderate. And so however this format takes place, we just need to be cognizant of farming out multiple versions of this
Sure.
before they're ready for prime time.
So, and we did know that it was going to be updated. I mean, Doug was going to take the input and he was going to highlight, the things that were changed. So that is reflective of that. But there has been several versions, and so this is the one that I'm going off of, that I printed off this afternoon, which I think is the most current one. So with everything that I heard, and I took a lot of notes, and I need to digest this, and I need to look at this, and then I'll come up with some ideas, not unless somebody had some specific ones that you want to address now, or what do you want to do?
I just had a couple comments.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think we do need to look at this, but I think we also owe it to the people in the audience to let them know what our thought process is going to be, and let them know when we're going to be talking about this, and actually give them some little justification of why we did this. The The commission received this at one of our work sessions. I started getting calls about it right away. It hasn't helped that and I'll take some blame for it, because I'm one of the commissioners, but yes, they have gone back and forth, and I apologize for that. I think that we owe that to these people that came here to say that we should have, and we will handle this better. I know we talked today, and you asked me how can we do this better and how it's done in the past, and I said we should have started this in January or February. We should have come out with a plan as a commission, working with you and with staff, that if we're going to come out with the rates this significant, that not only do we have to tell them when we're going to do it, we also tell them why and what the product is going to be of these increases. You came at a bad time, Doug, and like I said, we're all going to face the heat from it. My phone is still probably going off in my car, but what I think we need to make sure that we tell our users and also the people in the Port District that we are going to make a better effort of doing this. Make sure we don't stop giving them a moving target and justify why we're going to do these increases. Whether it's on Port Dock 5 or Port Dock 7, cost goes up. Their costs of their businesses go up. But we also need to make sure that we're going to be responsible with that money that we're going to be taking from that extra money. So that's what my intentions are with these meetings. And like I said, we could have done a better. I'm speaking for myself now. I could have done a better job in bringing this out. And I'm not going to say I'm sorry that it had to come to this, but I'm going to work hard, and I hope the rest of us are going to work hard to make sure that we make this work. Use the groups that we have set up. We have one here in the marina. We haven't done it for a long time, a marina users group. We have the fishermen's user group. We need to get on board with this. And like I said, we'll talk about them later. But we do have a lot of interested people here, a lot of passionate people, and we need to reach out to them better and make sure that we get their input.
Okay. Yes, Jeff.
I have a conflict of interest as my father-in-law owns 2 commercial fishing vessels. Uncertain of whether it would be classified potential actual or if a class exemption applies. But however, today I will not participate in the discussion on the matter.
I had one other.
Oh, yes.
I'm sorry. And this is, David brought this up also. When I first got on the commission, we just issued parking stickers willy-nilly. And the reason that we started, one of the reasons we started charging for them, the increase, was to make sure that we didn't lose any money with the money that we paid to the parking district. And the money that we made from the stickers was only to cover that cost at administration. So it was never to be a money maker. And it was, I know some of the fishermen talked to us about that. And when we explained that we weren't making money off of them, it was just to cover our costs. And so that would hopefully clear that up.
Historical. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, Sarah.
Well, I kept up with the iterations, and I know that some of the people in the audience did, which was really confusing, but we all did it. And I take my job real seriously here too, as we all do. And so I do have some recommendations just from, it's been 2 work sessions this month and the whole month, to kind of think about this, and I hear from people. And so I think that it's gotten better, and we don't want to bilk our customers and make them go broke. And I think it's obvious that Port Dock 7 got the steamy end of the deal. And so as far as general starting point of percentages, in my view, it would be 6% at Port Dock 7 and break that out away from Port Dock 5 and 3 and 1, and maybe 12% at 5 and 3 and 1. I'm not sure what goes on in South Beach. I see confusing information. I agree with Don Matthews that there's something wrong with the charter thing, that it would be so high at 40-some%. And other stuff is at...
It was 42.9 in a semi.
Right, 42.9 and 59.6. Yeah, and that doesn't seem equitable, so some more needs to be done on the charter. And so I would say that, 6% at 7, if you're in an emergency, a disaster, and then 12 at 5 and 7, 5 and 1, 3, I thought 12, and maybe 12 would be equitable because charter are more commercial. I agree with that kind of sentiment. And then the terminals, I'd recommend 25%. So that's what I think might work, or a starting point that would have been better than 200 and something. And I certainly agree with the liveaboards that that is not equitable for. I had no idea what kind of people were here. I still don't know how many. We don't have enough information, so I don't know enough about South Beach to really speak to that 12%. But on the commercial side, I feel real solid about those numbers as a starting point of input. So that's what I'm bringing forward.
Okay. Did you have any other?
No, I guess one of the points that Walter subtly made, but certainly was made by a lot of folks here today, was I think it seemed like on some level there was a consensus that some rates need to go up a little bit. Everybody realizes things cost a little more. But the other sentiment that I think was also very valid was that people want to know what they're paying for and what they're going to get for it. And I think that's going to be, I think it's part of the job of the board and the commission to make sure that with these rates that, you know, for lack of a better word, we make a promise to make the improvements that we need to, or at least certainly not make it go backwards. So that's some of the things I'll be thinking about going forward here.
Okay. Okay, so we're gonna talk about this again. I want everybody to really consider what was said tonight. I think it's very, very important.
Patricia?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Are you collectively, are you looking for a work session on that specifically?
That would be my suggestion, but what do you guys think?
I think we go line by line.
Okay.
Work session.
Okay. Yes.
I think we should have a Fisherman's User Group meeting first, and also next couple weeks, and let's get them in front of this too, and so they're not just coming to our meeting and giving comments.
Okay.
I might interject, though, we ought to coordinate with budget schedule.
Yeah.
Because this has to be, should be done. Typically, you would do your rates first. That would determine how much your revenue is going to use, that to determine how much you're able to spend and what capital projects you're going to be able to do.
Again,
otherwise it's back asswards.
the timing
So,
is
we get
just
short
awful.
timing to get into that budget, unless you want to change that, and I don't know if it can be changed.
The budget is priority.
So, but what's the feedback here? So, you know, I think maybe there's a concern here that everybody may show up in May, and all of a sudden there's a vote and it's done without any more feedback or any more opportunities to comment on some of the rates that we might put together. It's going to be.
Okay, so I found the budget schedule. So these are our dates here. We have, okay, so we did April 3rd. We're at Wednesday, April 20th. We did April 25th. We have Tuesday, May 1st, Tuesday, May 8th, and then Wednesday, June 6th. And then I have June 26th, the public hearing and adopt the budget resolution. Is that correct? Does that sound right? I mean, this was a,
26 wasn't outrageous.
Yeah.
That was short.
that's the
And
timeline.
these rates have to be approved so that they can go into the next fiscal year budget
Beginning July 1st, yes.
estimates. Yeah, and that's July 1.
Correct. But it's done long before that. You implement it and basically allocate those funds in June, and they're basically appropriated at that time.
So I have no problem setting a time, and we can do a work session for this, and we can also do one for the the international terminal like you want to do. So I guess you just have to pick a date. But these dates are already set. We have to deliver the agenda on May 1st. Message.
I can suggest some dates tomorrow after I look over everybody's calendars.
Okay.
Yeah, why don't we do it that way?
Okay.
And
Okay. All right.
Patricia,
Yes.
I would say that if we can't get enough input and we can't have a Fisherman's User Group meeting, then we should just look at doing a 3% increase like we've done the last few years, and then 2 or 3 months down the road, then we can implement a new rate and fees and then do a supplemental budget.
Yeah, and Doug brought that to our attention. We can do that. I mean, we can make changes after we put all this information to the budget, we balance the budget, and then we can make, alterations. I mean, I know that's a possibility to do that.
Right, but if we need to submit something to the budget committee, we can, the last couple of years, we've done a 3% increase, and if we're going to do that higher, we can take, say, 3 months down the road, then we can have everybody get input. 'Cause I think we're going to keep hearing about this, and I think other than rushing everybody's schedule and compressing everybody's time, we should make sure we make the right decision and take the time to do this the right way.
Okay.
Last year it went up 5.23% on recreational and 5.87% on commercial, so it's already increased past 3.
And didn't you say 5? That was your...
Yeah. I said 6 on 7 and 12 and 12 and 25.
Okay. So we'll get working on that. Okay. Any other questions? Any other comments? All right. So the next one is new business. I already addressed the public comment form. Does everybody understand that, what that is about? Any questions? Yeah.
Yeah. Does that mean that someone can say on here, I want to talk about the parking, and so they can
Exactly.
write the parking, and then they can be part of the discussion?
Exactly.
Throughout
Well, not so
the
much
agenda.
part of the discussion, but they can offer public comment.
Right. So,
So
Within the agenda, not
within
just
the
at
agenda.
the beginning of the
That is correct, yeah. They don't get 3 shots. They get if you're talking on a specific item, you write it
had
in.
input into that, and they're like, well, I don't know what I want to talk about
Yeah.
until after the meeting.
And sometimes you can do that, and some people do come in afterwards,
So
after
can
they
write
have
on
talked.
there,
Yeah,
I want to hear what you have to say first.
exactly. It works really good at the city. I mean, it flushes stuff out, and it gives people the opportunity not to sit through a whole meeting when their agenda item is at the very last or the very beginning or in the middle or something like that, so.
But it's not required for the public comments at the beginning or the end?
No,
Okay,
no.
great.
No. So is that good? We will institute that in the next meeting? Yes? Walter?
Oh, I'm fine.
Jeff?
Good.
Okay. All right.
May I
Update.
ask a question, just logistically, how will
Sure.
they submit them?
You give them to me.
How
Usually
exactly?
they fill them out and then they give them to me and I'll call the people.
Okay, so they won't submit them ahead of time, only at the meeting?
They have to be at the meeting, yeah. I mean, that's
Okay,
to
that's
fill
just
it
my
out,
question,
yeah. I mean, people can always send in a comment and have that sent to all the commissioners, and it can be included in our packet and stuff. So they always have that ability to do that. Yeah,
We could even put that form on the web. if
Yep.
you'd like.
absolutely. Okay, so next is updating the strategic business plan and capital facilities plan. Doug?
Okay,
Thanks, Jeff.
the state in 2010 set up they're going to align all the ports in the state, the Oregon, Business Oregon and their ports division, so everybody was heading in the same direction. And the idea was that the Infrastructure Finance Authority, part of the Oregon business, would give matching grants, 75% on their part, 25% on the port's part, to develop these business plans that are what they call a 5-year plan. They actually consist of 2 parts, the strategic plan and the capital portion of it. And the capital portion has a much smaller cost typically. When we did ours, they are a 5-year plan by law. Looked on the ordinances, they only really have to be done every 10 years, but the state, we met with the state on Friday, we were over there in Salem, they want them done every 5 years. Ours expired the week I came in, so I apologize I didn't get that.
Bad timing.
Yeah. So anyway, it's expired, we met with the IFA already on it, and they have decided, for whatever reason, they have until the end of the month, they're soliciting all the ports to say who needs to upgrade their plans, and Newport, we asked, hat in hand, we said, we want to, we'll do matching funds, and it's time to do ours. And they basically told us, well, there's a problem. We can't fund yours. And I said, why not? And basically they said, we can't fund it because of the way things happened associated with the agreement that you discussed before on the shipping area. And because of they felt they put in a lot of work working on the Connect Oregon stuff, on the Tiger grants and different pieces, so they lost some face effectively too on all that politically. And the Oregon business right now has their own political problems with the things I sent the commissioners. And basically, they told us, we can't do that right now, it's not politically correct. It can't be done. And I said, well, that sounds a little like restitution. Or retribution. You're punishing the port for something that was done before, and now the port's saying we want to move forward with business arrangements out of the international terminal, and we want to move with it. Well, they said, yeah, that's true, but it isn't retribution because we have a precedent. We did the same thing with Astoria last year, and we made them pay for their plan. You guys need to pay for your plan. They said, if you do it yourself, then we will consider, the state will consider that you're 90% of the way back in everybody's good graces. And
Okay.
that's where we're at. We aren't redoing the plan from scratch. The original plan, we spent $62,000 on it 5 years ago. We paid a quarter of that. We're basically updating the plan now, and we've already, regardless of whether they paid or not, I already started the process with our staff. And for the 5 profit centers, we already sat down and our people developed the SWOT analyses of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for each of those profit centers. So we have already finished that. And that's typically what you would feed into one of these plans to start with anyway. So we did that and ready, thinking ahead, we want to move into the commission's goal-setting agenda shortly down the road here. That would have fed that also. So our next step is we're looking at the best way to effectively get that plan implemented, and we're going to do it without the state.
Okay.
And it needs to be done, so we're going to tackle it.
So you need a motion on this, is that correct?
I don't believe we do. I think it was put here for informational purposes to tell people how the meeting went.
Okay.
And we need to move forward with it. I mean, you can tell me not to move forward, I'll take it off the table, but we're.
How much is it? So how much is it going to cost?
I think it'll be under 25,000 as opposed to the 62 to do one new. It does have a lot of components where you're addressing the different stakeholders in the port, and they're going to have their feedback into it. And so it's not a simple, just rewrite the darn thing kind of thing.
You have to have the input into it.
Are we going to have to do an RFP for it?
I can't answer that right off. I'd have to. I think it depends on what we get some initial ballpark numbers from the people that could help us do it. Unfortunately, I wanted to start just having the people that did the last one work with us, and that fellow passed away since then.
Oh.
But there were other people on the group that did it. He wasn't the only one. He was the main one.
Yeah.
So we're working along that line, and before too long here, I'll have some numbers, and then when I know what the numbers are, how much it costs, I'll know what mechanism we have to follow as far as whether it has to go out to bid and resources and all that.
Okay. So we'll just consider this as informational for right now, and then you'll get back to us on that. Did anybody have any questions, comments? Okay. Where are we at now? We are at transferring sufficient. What?
7C. Yeah, you're right.
Transferring sufficient money within the NOAA fund. So we talked about this before, and Doug has given us some information on this. Has everybody had a chance to review it? Any questions? Can I get a motion?
I make a motion to transfer the amount of $200,000 from NOAA account number 51085 to NOAA account number 51087, maintenance and replacement.
Okay.
Second.
I got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Motion passes.
Opposed?
Oh, okay. 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 Next. Now, I got two agendas here. Okay.
May I ask a question here?
Sure.
And I'm new to this process, so I see one commissioner here opposing. I for one, and probably the folks in the audience would like to know what his rationale is there, because it counts.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we had the discussion. This, if you want to do it, sure.
My reasons are the same one that I gave last time. I don't think that we should be spending money out of that fund until we realize
Oh,
how much
we're
we're
not-
going
Okay, we're not
we
spending
shouldn't,
it.
we shouldn't be transferring out of there, that's all.
We're not transferring it out. It's staying in the NOAA account. We're just moving it from one money market to another that's making higher interest, because that higher, the other one that also is making 4 times the interest is specified as maintenance and, maintenance and replacement. And that's what it's specified for. And in the coming fiscal year, on NOAA, we have 3 items, 2 of them which we have to do by the contract. And they are going to make that fund go negative if we don't do that now. So I'm just trying to be proactive
Yeah.
and say, we need to move it over there so we don't have to have an emergency thing when the time comes. We have to do that.
And I have no problem with that whatsoever, so, okay. Okay, so now, okay, like I've got 2 agendas here, and one says staff reports. Okay, but then I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no.
It's now that item D.
218.
resolution.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, resolution. See, that's not on here.
You've got an old version. Old meeting a couple days ago.
This is the one with the pages on it. Okay, so the next item is item D, Resolution 2018-17 to repeal Resolution 2703 entitled "A Resolution Creating a Commercial Fishing User Group Committee." Okay. Questions, comments? Yes, Jeff.
I think we heard a lot of testimony about how important community feels that is, and just the communication it provides and the benefit it can be. So I support the benefit it provides.
Okay, well, what do you feel about the resolution itself?
I'm not prepared to support it right now. I kind of wanted to hear from Sarah as well, since she's the liaison and is closer to the issue. So
Okay.
I wanted to hear from her too. So.
Well, there's been meetings and discussions with the committee chair, myself, and the manager, and Patricia, and lawyer, and anything, and it just, we're fighting hard to keep this alive, really, because we feel it's really, really important, and yet we do understand some of the reticence about it, but I think that it's really, really important that we convene a meeting with the user group, because these are grown adults that run businesses and are the leaders of our industry. And if there are problems, we can talk about it then. But I really do believe that it's a wonderful benefit to us, and again shows that it would have been helpful in these rates and fees. And it's not a heavy-handed group. We make our rules, we vote who the leader is. There was, if anything, it's more casual than it should be, and the fact that the bylaws aren't written yet. But we all are like, well, then help us understand what needs to be done. And bylaws can be done. Anyway, I would love to see this continue, and I think that everybody on the committee that I talked to feels as though it's something that the port's been trying to get together for decades, really, and it's such a good group. It's of the 11 sectors and people that take time out of their schedule to be helpful to the port. I mean, they're not mandating anything, they're not, it's just, advisory is a bad word, but I would like to see at least it convened to talk about it, and I would also like to know what my fellow commissioners think about it continuing. We haven't had a discussion on this resolution, and I really had issues with the resolution language, and I let that be known, and because of this other, getting ready for this meeting, I was not able to rewrite that a bit the way I thought it should be. It just, there were many things in it that bothered me. So I apologize that I didn't have it rewritten for the commission to review what I thought, and so I wasn't able to get to that, and I just, would hate to see it go away, really, but yeah, I'm supposed to rewrite the resolution. Happy to do that, I just didn't get it done today. But I hesitated because it's so hard for me to think of it going away.
Sure.
And then let's hear from the commercial fishing user group tonight. So it's confusing, the group. And I was asked aren't we going to have a meeting with these rates? Oh man, so that everybody was there willing to give good, solid
advice to us?
I'm curious about, I think one of the things that recently came to light was item number 1 on the resolution. And I'm wondering, Doug, is it appropriate for you to expand a bit on that?
I'd be happy to.
It seems to be more
GM
like...
hat on. I'd like to put my GM hat on and address it, and then I'd like to put on my fisherman's hat and address it if I could.
Please.
So, this is background information that I think everybody needs to know. First off, the attorney made it perfectly clear for the reason of item number 1 there. There are 4 reasons that it was felt that this should. First off, there was never any kind of a proposal to shut down the commercial fishermen users group. That was complete rhetoric on other parts that came in. It was made very clear to the group at the time that all that was proposed was to just simply make it not a standing committee, an official standing committee of the Port Committee, because there were legal ramifications and problems, which the attorney has addressed in great detail in 2 separate meetings with both the board liaison to the group and the group at the same time, the lead of the group at the same time. And so it was a very simple matter that's gotten blown out of proportion like a lot of things happen. All they're looking to do is, although I was told to look at seeing if it needed to do and then implementing if it needed to be done, was cutting the tie as a standing committee. The CFUG would continue to be the CFUG, and I heard, it'll fail without us in there. And it would still be able to meet whenever it wanted to meet, however it wanted to meet, keep records,
Says
not
here monthly on your
keep records, not keep records. It would be able to have private discussions if it wanted. It could have as many people get together and talk about things on the phone as it wanted to. It wouldn't have to worry about quorums or any kind of public meeting laws. And then they could take the issues that group had and bring them to me as general manager, which is typically how it would be done. And I try to address those issues, and the ones that I couldn't solve to their satisfaction, we would then take to the commission. So that was what was initially put forth. And what I constantly heard was, but I don't understand. And it was made very clear until the point that I said, hey, I keep hearing this, I don't understand. Let's have a meeting with the attorney who's saying why we need to do it and the people who don't understand and try to help them understand. So that was done. The attorney wrote up something that I didn't put into the agenda here because it was a confidential attorney document. And if he gave me permission to put it in here, and the commission did, certainly consider doing that. But it was made very clear, and I thought, well, why argue about all this stuff at a public session like this, at a venue, when we can resolve it that way? So we had Patricia, we had 2 commissioners, so we didn't have a public meeting going on. Patricia and Sarah, we had Heather, we had Dave Jinks, we had myself, we had Dave, our attorney. Yes. So there were a number of folks involved, and then there was a follow-up meeting the next day with the attorney and Sarah and Heather to further explain some of the detail that they still had some questions on. And then what I was told from the output of that meeting was, okay, everybody was on board with why it couldn't be a standing committee, or why the attorney recommended it not be a standing committee. And that was, I thought, the end of the story. And then we come back to here, I don't understand. So it's a little frustrating for me, coming from a different kind of sector. Then I tried to go out of our way to have multiple meetings beforehand so it didn't get into this kind of a situation where everybody had to listen to things that they may or may not want to hear about. We definitely, absolutely, the port absolutely wants to have the CFUG as a group that both we can provide feedback to, and I think Walter might want to address that. I had found some other information that he told me about that, and conversely, that the group can give to us as far as feedback on the rates and what have you. So it's a very simple mechanism, but what I was basically told was, no, we want to deal with the commission. We don't want to deal with you, effectively. So that's where it is, and you guys, whatever you tell me to do, I'll do. I just did what I was told to do. And now I'm going to switch my hat over to my fishing hat. I am from New Mexico. I take a certain amount of umbrage at some of these things, and I just grin and bear it. But I've also been fishing up in Lincoln County for the last 4 years, living up here. I've lived in Choctaw in Lincoln County 40 years ago. I know the area. Well, guess what? In Siletz, we have tides up there too. And I've lived in China, I've lived in Thailand. We have tides in all those places. So yeah, I know what a tide is. So thanks.
Okay.
That's, I'll put my
Stuart.
G on that now.
Well, it's still, I don't know, I don't want to be the one that keeps talking, but it's sounding like the port's attorney is the one that's having an issue with the title of a standing committee, and it's really rooted in, if you're going to be a formal standing committee, then you're subject to the public records laws. So and that takes a lot of time. I mean, look at everything that the port does, Karen does. We have dedicated people to that. But it's a liability, is that what I'm getting?
Absolutely.
That
And
somebody
also-
could sue them.
Exactly.
Technically,
And
somebody
so my
sue
first
them.
suggestion at the beginning was, well, why don't we just call it an advisory committee? And he said, no, that's the same thing. It has the same liabilities. And it's a matter of degrees. As long as somebody doesn't raise a stink about it, it'll probably be fine. But the minute somebody raises a stink about it, it's not technically the way it should be done legally.
Walter, did you have a?
The only thing, there is value. There is a tremendous value in this group. As a commissioner, I have no issue with them being an advisory group or a formal group. But I think that, like Sarah said, they're all adults. I mean, we need to make sure that they understand what the rules of being. There's a responsibility for being on this committee. There is a privilege to being on that committee, and that privilege is you need to abide by some rules. And we do need to have minutes. I mean, if they're going to be advising us, I want to make sure that there's minutes of these meetings, and I can hear what's going on. Sarah can't provide it. She provides an update, and Heather does also. But I just want to know what went on there, so I can cover myself. And as far as other liabilities, I mean, Mike and I serve on some advisory groups. I've served on some other ones, and it's you accept that to be part of these groups, and I think that these folks that want to be part of it need to be made aware of what this privilege is, and accept them at their word that they're going to obey by these rules. And we can't legislate, and we can't make sure they do everything and hold people's hand. But we need to have their input.
But if you want to take away the legal issue, then it's a simple matter of just calling it something different and making it not a standing committee, and let it completely function the way it was set up to function. The attorney's giving you advice, and people are wanting to not listen to his advice, and so that's where you get into some really gray areas.
So, Sarah, go ahead.
Well, of course, I was at the meetings with the lawyer, and it wasn't as black and white as that. And we have broken no meeting laws, and I think all these people would understand there. Thank you, Walter, for saying what you said. Some of the things I had problematic with this is, just the auspices of potential legal liabilities. And talking to the lawyer, it's true. But that's true, and like Walter said, any group, you take that responsibility to follow the meeting laws. Excessive time requirements of multiple Port of North staff to the detriment of their principal full-time duties bothers me. What is the fishermen? Aren't they part of the full-time duties? That's why I had issues rewriting this. I just would get angry, and I need to get over that. And then excessive, time requirement, and then labor costs of Port of Newport staff, that it was more than they thought, and so let's just throw it out with the bathwater is what that reads. And then blurring of lines of responsibility and duties of both Port of Newport staff involved with supporting the standing committee and some members of the standing committee, that's really blurry in itself. And so that's the rewrite I was going to do. And then
Sir, that was
it
taken
is
out.
said,
That
I'm
was
speaking,
removed.
Just a sec.
it is said that, that we should, whoever is going to be a CFUG chair should be talking to the port manager, and then he will report to us when I felt as though part of the strength of that committee was all of us hearing what the committee had to say. Again, is what Walter reiterated. So I don't want to get an attitude, but it's been real shady, I think, in many ways, and I think it does speak well that it's blurring of lines beyond anything reasonable at this point. I mean, just convene a meeting and explain it to the group. and put this running around the group.
So, okay. Well, what I would suggest on this,
Where are you at with this?
I understand the legal implications because I was there when the attorney, he made it very, very clear that this is, you know, this is something you need to do. I was not at the meeting with Sarah and the president, the chair of that group. I understand it. I sit on boards and committees myself, and I totally get this in the city. I know when I was sitting on the city council, there were certain things you could call them. You know, you had to call them a task force or an ad hoc committee. There was always special names you had to, you know, give certain things so that you distance yourself with the liability as much as possible. So I understand that. Not completely, but I understand it. And I got to tell you, I'm a little to blame on this because I remember when Commissioner Beck was on the commission, and he said, you know, how important it would be to have like an ombudsman or an ex officio, some representative from the fishing community, you know, give that input to the commission because we need that. There are stakeholders. I mean, there are constituents, and it's very valuable. And then this was organized by our former manager, so he came up with this. And, you know, we agreed to it.
The creation of the group.
The creation of the name.
Or the name.
Yeah. And so, you know, we voted on it and everything. And so I'm just as much to blame. I should have thought, well, wait a minute. Should it be called that or, you know, whatever. I don't know. The legal ramifications. So that I do understand. I was going to say something. And I just forgot it. Okay. So I think there's a great benefit to this group. I really do. I think it's very important. I mean, we heard tonight how important their input is. I would like to find a way to make this work, and I think we just need to sit them down and talk with the attorney. I mean, we have a port attorney. He advises us to do things, and that's the other thing, is that one of the things that we wanted to have, I'm just digressing for a second, I remembered, is that we wanted to have the attorney come to each commission meeting so stuff like this doesn't happen. So that if we were in the process of talking about forming a committee or something, we'd have legal counsel there to guide us better. So really, this is something that would probably never happen again. Pete Genther, our board attorney, was supposed to be here tonight, but he had some other, you know, pressing things he had to be at that were done way in advance. So, but every other meeting, he's going to be here.
He's actually on an airplane right now.
Yeah, he's on an airplane.
I didn't
So,
hear him say anything about the name.
when we talked with him,
Yep, nothing.
I could have sworn he did, but anyway.
Sounds like maybe there's a balance someplace, but maybe this being a special case, maybe we could hear what the chair of that committee has to say.
Sure,
Do you want to
absolutely. Yeah. Go ahead, Heather.
So what do you want me to respond to?
Just if you had any comments as the chair or president of that group.
Well, I think it's a very important thing. I think that a lot of what's been said about it, I agree with that. I mean, everybody on there is adults. Most of us serve on other panels and committees. Most of us understand public meeting laws. When we don't, Karen and Aaron have, so for example, the report I presented to you at the last 2 meetings ago, when we came up with the recommendations, it was during the public meeting. I wrote up the report, sent it out, and I told Aaron, or I said at the meeting, when you respond, hit reply all. And Aaron said, you can't do that. That violates the public meeting law. So they were advising us, and we haven't broken the public meeting laws. I totally disagree with Doug's characterization of what's happened over the last 2 weeks. Maybe that's something that we'll need to have a conversation about outside of here. I met with the attorney last week with Sarah, and he explained, you know, what his concerns were. He did not say this has to be disbanded, and I never agreed it had to be disbanded. In fact, I said, I understand your concerns, but let the committee members take on that liability if they want to. They're grown men.
And women.
And women carries on there. If they don't feel like they can meet those requirements, then they can step down. I mean, I don't see the big deal about it. Other commissions have them. And we've had a lot of really good conversations. It's a great place to vet issues. We spent 3 hours vetting issues at our last meeting. Better than doing it here, right? Having all, you know, we could have you could have avoided a lot of the consternation tonight if we had one of these meetings.
I hate to say it, but actually this is a good thing. We need to hear that. We really do. I'm not down on the docks. I don't have the ear like Sarah does. So
I don't disagree with that, Patricia, but you have a lot of really upset people.
I-
You could have avoided that.
I understand. I understand.
People worried about where they're going to be living or if they can pay the bills. I mean, I don't work for those people, but this committee represents
Yeah.
a cross-section of everybody. Nobody has majority. I think it's a great committee. I would like to see it continue under whatever it has to continue as. Having it be a separate committee that has no nexus with the commission doesn't make sense to me. We don't want to answer to Doug. We want to speak to you. That's what the fishermen want. We want to have that opportunity to comment on the things that are on your agenda and advise you. Whether you take our advice or not is up to you. But you're giving that opportunity for transparency and input. So that's my...
Thank you. Comments? Yes, Jeff.
This issue's become a point of contention. It seems like maybe it shouldn't have had to have been. If there's some way we can resolve to where it's not contentious, that would be this shouldn't have to be a contentious issue. Can we somehow move it away from that, figure out how we can move forward and get to where we need to be?
Go ahead.
It just seems like there is a question of maybe formalizing a bit. I mean, we do have to make sure we have the best interests of the port from a legal perspective at hand here. And if it's a question of saying, well, if there aren't, appropriate legally defendable minutes being taken, or, I mean, is there, maybe what we do is need to provide the committee with more of a checklist that says, these are the things that have to be in place to protect the port if this thing's going to keep going forward. Maybe we make sure that those are crystal clear and reevaluate it again in a few months or 6 months or whatever to ensure that it's still that's working. I mean, as long as we're defending ourselves from a legal perspective, and I think that's an important component to all of this. The feedback's important. I think everybody realizes that the committee itself is not here to vote on any of this stuff. They provide and advise. They play an advisory role, and it seems like that the consensus is to keep this as a standing committee. But I think it's important that the committee understands what's expected of them and that the port hold them accountable for that. And if those break down, then we reevaluate whether it needs to be happening going forward. Be my thought.
Okay.
Patricia?
Yes.
Yeah, when I came in here, I was given very clear direction on this particular item and told to handle it. I handled it.
Okay.
And if I were an outsider looking at this, and I said, here's a group of people that don't listen to their attorney's advice.
Yeah.
I would be very cautious about it.
Yeah, and I understand that, and maybe one of these things that we need to do is have Pete in the room with the full commission instead of just me, because I'd rather you all be able to ask him the questions that are important. So I am going. Go ahead. Did you have a question? Any other comments?
I was going to
Yes.
say if we can't have it, well, we can have it. We're talking with Pete, so it would be fine. I was going to say if that doesn't fall under our executive session rules.
It would fall under our executive session rules, absolutely. And so I would definitely suggest that we go ahead and get that lined up and
but-
when Pete's scheduled.
I mean, to Doug's point, though,
Yes.
I mean, he is bringing up a concern that's been brought to our attention by the attorney, and I think we do need to make sure, again, that the expectations of these things are crystal clear. I don't want to set up this committee to fail or to torpedo it based on a nuance here. I mean, these are pretty well established things, and quite frankly, they take a lot to understand what you can or can't do. But I think that's the most important thing. But I mean, Doug is doing his job in
Yes, he
bringing
is.
this to our attention as a board. So I just think it just needs to be clear and then evaluated.
Yes, Sarah.
I mean, I think there is a long game, is what are kind of referred to it as. And I think it exhibits, the user group committee is a symptom of what went on with the rates, is that it was just a little bit cart before the horse, a little bit jumping to action before understanding the true implications of it. And so I think there's a long game. We don't have to meet. We can sit back. We can let the dust settle. We aren't. I mean, I agree completely. I'm not going to turn my back on legal advice, and I haven't. But there's a long game here that I think we need to think about in keeping this committee.
Okay. So I'll leave it up to Doug to go ahead and orchestrate a executive session so that we can speak with our attorney. I think that's...
Can you give me some time frame on that?
When is he getting back? Do you know?
It'll be about a week till he gets back.
Okay. When he gets back, then, you know, all we need to do is, you know, provide the 24-hour notice, and then we can have this dialogue. I think it's important that, you know, the commission, because you have questions that I can't answer for him, so. And my meeting with him was, you know, pretty brief too, so. Okay. All right. So, moving on. We have staff reports.
Okay, county supervisor is absent tonight, so I'm going to jump in and give you a couple of items from his report. Just a couple of highlights. Another thing is we're no longer going to stand up here and read staff reports to you guys. You're smart enough to read it before you come in here. We're going to talk about some highlights of it. So that's the new procedure. And if you have a problem with that, we'd be happy to go back and start reading it to you.
No, it'll save on time,
Okay.
trust me.
So basically, overall fiscal year, we basically have the first calendar quarter results for this calendar year, January, February, March, which is the third quarter of our fiscal year. And so of that amount, basically fiscal year to date, so the first 3 quarters there, our revenues are increased by about 8% over the previous year. So our expenses, our operating expenses, are increased by about 6.5%. So our revenues increased slightly more than our operating expenses increased. As a consequence, because of that, we're 3/4 of the way through that fiscal year. We should be 75% of the way on individual budget items as well, would be the target. So effectively, if we look at overall, that we're not at 75%, we're under target at about 61% right now. So we're doing quite well. And we'll have the funds to finish the projects that we wanted to do this year. So that's basically his report.
Okay.
The occupancy of the RV park is part of that.
Yep.
It's in there too. You can look at it. The RV park's chock full. You can walk outside and see that any Friday night. And pretty soon it's not going to be Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's going to be around the clock.
Good.
And that will last until September.
Okay.
Okay.
You gonna put Doug in the overflow on that up?
It's bad enough I have to pay the full rate.
Okay. Director of Operations?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, my report's in there. You can see it. I got a couple pictures here from the failed storm drain down here in South Beach. You can see the potholes that are coming from that. After the report was done, Jim Durkee over at NOAA sent me a couple photos. We've got some chafing issues on fender pilings over at NOAA right now. The way that the camels are held up against the fender pilings, camels are the timbers that lay alongside the base of a pier that act kind of as a first fendering system to keep boats and ships from running into the fender pilings too bad. In any case, the chains that are used to hold them up against fender pilings are starting to chafe rather heavily because there's a pipe that goes on the back side of those pilings that's meant to reduce the chafing, and some of those pipes have failed. Aside from that, they're very heavy. They sink down, so it's putting tension on the chain, and as it rides up and down with both wind chop and through the tide cycle, it's really chafing the sides of the pilings now. So we got a couple of potential fixes that we're gonna give it a shot. One of the original possibilities in the design was to make those pipes buoyant with additional flotation, which would reduce the tension on the chain so that it doesn't ride on the fender pilings as badly. Because over time, what's going to happen is it'll cause the pilings to fail. So we're working on that one. Aside from that, if anybody has issues with their power pedestal on the dock, please, 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 if nothing else, call me. My cell phone number is 541-961-3904. It's a bit of a reactive stance. What needs to happen in the long run is we need to be out front and prevent it. But I will haul my rotund posterior to your slip, and we will figure out what's going on with your power pedestal. Don't accept it. Don't say nothing about it. Come to me. Let me know. We'll get down there and get it fixed. That's all I got.
Any questions? Yeah.
Happy birthday, Aaron.
Yes,
Thanks.
Oh, happy birthday.
No, I had one earlier.
There is beer
All myself.
over there. Okay. General manager report.
That's me, huh?
Yep.
I wrote a general manager report. It's up there. You can read it if you want. It's also, because I didn't finish it up until fairly late, it's in the agenda, but it's also as a separate line item if you just want to get up there and click on it. So I appreciate the opportunity to give you all that feedback, and I'm not going to read through it. Basically, I accomplished over 30-some major items in my first month. I had individual meetings with over 60 people in that first month. I met close to 100 total folks. It was like drinking from a fire hydrant. And one of the representatives, I got a lunch Friday with one of the reps, and he basically sent me a note and said, who told you it ever stops? It just keeps going. So that was a little scary. Basically, I did a staff report to our staff at the end of my first month, and one of the items in there I just want to throw out here just for the heck of it. I didn't tell the commissioners, I didn't push it on any of the public, but I am going to go ahead and let you know. I keep a very detailed log like an accountant does, being a nuclear engineer, and I know what hours I put in, where I did, where I drove, what I did. I put in X number of hours in the first month. I averaged just over 86 hours a week for the entire first month. So I'm concerned about the board. I want to get up to speed as quick as I can and address your issues. I can't meet all of you at once. I've met a heck of a lot of you. I've had a lot of you in my office. I've been out on some of the boats. I've been on research boats. I've been on fishing vessels. I've been on the docks so many times on the pier. We've been in the docks. We've been under the docks. Every week, Aaron and I are doing these piecemeal walkabouts, a little bit at a time, usually caused by some reason we have to be looking at that particular place at that point in time. I'm doing everything I can. And I can't keep this pace up forever. I generally tackle things like this. I do 40 days at a shot, bust my tail, and then take a day off, get a haircut, buy groceries, put some propane in the RV, watch a TV show, and go back at it for 40 days. So I can probably do it for 40 days. After that, I'm going to have to back up. I missed winter skillhead season completely. I got a brand new ticket sitting in my camper. I didn't go to the river once. I was in that office every minute. There were days when I put in 20-hour days. And I got a lot done. So I'm concerned about this. I want to take care of you guys, and I appreciate the opportunity to do it. I've got a couple items at the very end of my report I'd like to address because I think they're really critical. They're lessons I've learned from working with commissioners, and I don't think the public really understands, especially item C. And this one I'll read. I now clearly recognize that the commissioners of these public agencies have really huge constraints because they're not able to freely discuss their opinions. They're not able to brainstorm their ideas with their colleagues. And they can't interactively discuss particular issues as a group until they meet in this forum right here with the public, with all of you guys. And so, I mean, that's not fair. It's the way it is. It's the law. So I mean, you guys really need to understand these guys are, first off, they're working for free. And they're trying to go through all this stuff I'm sending them, and every day they're getting stuff from me. They're getting very detailed reports from me, periods, not at the end, just day of the month. And they come in here with the public and the media and everything, and all of a sudden they're supposed to make decisions on things that a month before they'll tell me, these are the items we want you to take care of and give us solutions for. I do that. I try to give them my rationale, and I present it, but they can't discuss it amongst themselves until they show up here. So, hey, this is an iterative process, guys. I never realized that before. You got to really hopefully understand that. And the ones of you that have been here around, I see Dave smiling back
I
there.
got the public law here, so I got things wrong. So, yeah.
It's
You got a few things wrong.
Yeah. So, anyway, that's basically it.
Okay, all right, thank you. So next is public comment, and then I've got a whole... I'm sorry, commissioners' reports. Does anybody have any commissioners' reports? I know we've been really busy. I went to Cascades West with Doug, and we've also met with David Gomberg, and went up and saw Kurt Schrader up in Lincoln City. That was that forum we went to, and that was about it. So, okay, now it's public comment.
Anybody
yes.
else? Any other?
I asked. No. Did you? Okay. Public comment. David.
Okay. First off, I do, in my commission days, I always have the public meeting laws with me. And I carry it in my briefcase because I have been on a lot of committees. Some of them assigned by Congress, other areas also. The public, the users committee, you know, what is it, Patricia? The city has probably 19, 20 committees they use. So what is so difficult about us asking the committee, asking the city, how do they form these committees?
Yeah.
How do they operate them? Because Derek was right here. I've been on committees with Derek years ago. And he was always the staff person that ran the committees. He would report to the commission, to the city council. He didn't report to the city manager. He reported to the council. I think that's all this committee wants to know is that what the work it does goes to the commission. It's not, Doug, not that I don't trust you. It's just that it should go to the commission. It should be their direct voice to the commission. I you know, go to the city and ask them. It can't be that difficult because they run a lot of them, and one of them is just here. So the other thing is on the terminal. Stuart, I support getting this meeting going. It's very, very important to understand and have a business plan for that terminal. Some people said, well, you know, there's this issue with it, that issue with it, losing money, blah, blah. Well, you know, there's 56 jobs up there right now that are working. I have 18 of them out of my warehouse that bring in $2 million a year. That's up at the terminals. You have all these leases. So, but we need to understand how we can generate more income here. And I'm all for, I support that 100%. It should have been done in 2013. Didn't get it done. My fault. Should have really pressed it. Rates and personal services. These all go together. And when we're talking about rates and fees, this is the part that sets your budget. Budgets aren't that difficult. But rates and fees, that's the nut of your budget right there. Because leases are all pretty much stationary. You aren't going to get any rises on those until a lease comes due, do the CPI stuff, and then look at leases again, you know. So that doesn't determine your budget. Bonds, payments are going to stay the same they are. Did Dave Olbert get a hold of you?
Not yet.
Our bond counsel?
No, not yet. Well, we spoke on the phone, but we haven't.
You really should have a personal meeting with this guy, because Dave Olbert's really good. I don't think he's going to be able to do anything with your bonds, because I believe it was 3 years ago was the last time we roped in 2 or 3 of them. We didn't save any money, but what we did was combine them, I think, if that was the issue. But Dave Olbert's really smart. He does a good job. He's a good guy to talk to.
Yeah, I appreciate the reference, and I followed up, and he is sending me info.
Okay, so when you're looking at your rates and fees, you know, you look at some of this adjusted personnel changes. You know, we've already done some increases in labor because of what Todd Kimball said, you know, and that's great. I disagree with some of Todd Kimball's work when he takes in the state of Washington. That's a poor example when you're doing rate comparisons. You should stay inside your own state. But, you know, when you're looking at that, you know, you look at your personnel increases, you know, our personnel increases with labor increases and everything else, I mean, we're increasing over $200,000 suggested for this 18 and 19. Well, that's a crime. We're adding 2 new positions. We're adding an engineer and a gopher. I mean, come on, guys. You know, these guys are sitting here complaining about what their new rates and fees are going to be. Well, this is outlandish. You know, we had a pay schedule in place that we worked really hard on. It was outdated. It needed to be updated because the new minimum wage law changed that and that. All you had to do was readjust it. Now we have some type of new pay schedule based between a COLA and I don't know what, but it hasn't been presented to the commission yet, and I haven't seen it described in any of your meeting packets. But we're already raising some of our personnel in the suggested budget proposal by some of them 6, 8, 10%. that, we need to be honest with the mortgage holders and everybody about these rates. This is what drives your rates. So you got to sit back and look at your rates and fees. Figure that one out before you start publishing this, the $200,000 increase in personal services. And we all agree that we depend on personal services. No doubt about it. And we want them to get paid as well as any other personal services. But some of this, you got to get a hand on this first before you start adjusting those rates and fees. Yep, that's it. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for all the hard work. Hey, look at us.
Oh, time. Yes. Please state your name.
Hi, Eric. I'm trying to figure out why we're having a problem with this user group. I'm sitting on a lot of different committees and groups, and somehow everybody else seems to do it. I'm sitting on a loan parking committee right now. We seem to be able to get it done. So you need to figure that out. You could have saved a lot of hassles here tonight if we would have ran this to the user group. You got a lot of really, we all own businesses. Most of us have started with nothing and operated with nothing and have learned to do that. So you need to run these through these user groups. Save you a lot of hassle here. Another thing, Doug, I was an advisor on the 5-year plan on the Toledo shipyard. Okay? Bud is a master at getting free money. Okay? We had a lot of discussion about this terminal. I got a lot of discussions about this. And he put out a leaf to Greenwald on how to get this debt forgiven. There's a lot of shipyards in this country, a lot of boat yards, and a lot of mortgage places all across this country that borrow money and can't pay it back. And there's grants and abilities to have these forgiven, and so we don't have this problem. And that should be investigated extremely heavily. And I suggest to you to have conversations with Bud about it. He tried to talk to Greenwald about it. They had the vision of the logs instead and wanted to go that direction. So I think now we're at a point where we need to have that discussion. And I think Bud is an extremely good asset to look at that. And I urge you to sit down with the user groups and look at these fees. I think we can have a lot less problem.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, Paul.
Thank you.
We're waiting.
It's only been 3 hours today. Presentation tonight was kind of a surprise, and that's why I'm here. There wasn't a real reason to come down. It's kind of like after 10 months, you got to go over there. You got to bring it back up and talk about it. We got the memo. You don't want us here. We got that memo. We left. As a party to the export operation, we believe the board made a decision. And you said you moved on. We asked why the board commission was bringing this up. The tone of this rationale is that we were a bad actor. And that's what we took away. It's when you read this, and it's been shared with others, what is the tone they take away? The tone they take away is we were bad actors. In the presentation, there's no mention of the exclusive use requirements the board placed on the deal. Now, those exclusive use were from November to mid-January, April to May. We could not get assurances so we could operate at the port. And even today, the port's tariffs and laws would allow that to happen. What we were told, and that was one of the biggest things that drowned any discussion to a halt, was we can't do this. You can't be here these days. Surprisingly, throughout this presentation, it was claimed that our deal required the port to cede operations, which was repeated a couple times here again tonight. We never asked to cede operations. All we said was we wanted the ability to come in and act as a port, as a shipper. We wanted to come and use the dock for 6 days, whatever the cycle would be. But it had to be a dependable cycle. We wanted to sit there as like any other business. If you're going to have a 3-week schedule, we have to be able to keep a 3-week schedule. That was it. But again, in this report, it talked about cede operations, your words, and exclude all other opportunities. We never said that. Where are the draft agreements where those words come from? Some of the language is a little bit inflammatory, and I won't go through that. The financial analysis section in spreadsheets failed to show the price indicators, the CPIs, that were in the agreement. You go back and check them. Why weren't they included in here? When you're doing this fiscal analysis, you don't show that. There's no mention that the team and the port were both good business. That business loan was going to be reduced 1% as you started to grow business. It doesn't show in your financial models. Why? There's no mention of the effort undertaken by Keevan to get the bar channel dredged. There's a mention of, well, we don't know if we'll be able to pay for the dredging. Who paid for the lobbies to go back to Washington, D.C. to get that bar channel dredged out there? Who paid for the constant pressure we put on the port to get that turning basin dredged? How many dredge meetings did the port attend? I attended all. And I attended the port dredging meeting as recently as last month, and not one person from the port of Newport was there. The title of the presentation says these are the facts known by the commissioners in June of 2017. But under the potential pitfalls, somebody starts talking about tariff rates, which were replaced in the fall of 2017. Now we're starting to mix the timeline. That's under the exclusion of other opportunities, we restate that our goal is to use the marine terminal for 6 days per month to load a ship. The timber would be stored at McLean Point. It wasn't on the dock. Up to 6 days per month does not exclude other opportunities. There are at least 24 days, one month there's only 23 or 24, 22. But heck, it's only 6 days a month we wanted to use the face of the dock. Under the prerequisites, the language infers that these negotiations these are kind of negotiations took part in the dark without legal review. Nothing could be further from the truth. We undertook numerous public meetings. We had 14 public meetings, including all the stuff we did at the city of Newport. The port did not have adequate funds to pay for the lease development legal work. We paid for those. Teeman Brothers paid for the port's legal fees to negotiate with ourselves. Comments about the logistic integration plan seem strange in this report. Again, and this will go part to that. Our group never asked for anything not already authorized with the standing port agreement or standing port operations. Prohibitions on ship calls during November, December, January, April, and May were imposed upon us by the port, not the other way around. We never did say that. It seems strange. Remember what the project was. The project was to develop McLean Point. It was never on that terminal. It was just to use that terminal. We invested a significant amount of time and energy. We were required to, and our project was going to clean up that mess that the port has out of McLean Point. The first iteration, we would have paid for that entire project. We had people trying to clean that and fix it all up. But we got bogged down in legal challenges and legal challenges and legal challenges, which we paid for. And then that investor decided to walk away because they said 3 years is just a little too long to try to get a permit. We paid for the writing of the Tiger Grant. My company did. The port didn't have to spend a penny, but we wrote the Tiger. We had to pay for the consultant to write the Tiger Grant for a $2.5 million loan that the port gave back. We also allowed Business Oregon, and that's why that 1% kicker was in there as an incentive to try to do business. We would like to use the international terminal for 1 week a month, and other times, basically, that terminal is yours to use. And again, this is no different than any other port, public or private, anywhere in the world. We have discussed, in full disclosure, we've discussed lumber exports out of this port as recently as January. But we can't get there because nobody has answered the question for us. Could we have a program? It's not just the Port of Newport. If I'm doing a lumber export program at Newport, I have to have another facility somewhere else to land. That facility is in San Diego, California. I can get a commitment from the Port of San Diego that every 4 weeks I can come in and I can unload a barge for 5 days. I need that commitment here, but I can't get one up here. We've asked. And that's why we drop pencil on lumber, and that's why we drop pencil on logs. think the last is we've asked for reimbursement for our expenses. As Sean Teeman has said, and you've heard it, we spent over $600,000, nearly $600,000. We have $240-some thousand that are direct benefit to the port, and all that information was turned over to you. You were given all the permits, all our engineering work, all the stuff that's going to be necessary for you or your next customer to come in there. The cost, one of the biggest costs, were the darn going to LUBA and paying for land use. Only because that work is done does this port have the ability to now say, I can bring 50 trucks a day. You're never going to have to go back to the city as long as you keep that stuff going. We wait forward and we look forward to hearing back from you if there's going to be a reimbursement for those expenses. But we have turned over to the port all of that information. That was that MOU that was cited. That's the information. That was our gift to you for an opportunity. And you guys walked away from us. We get that. But I think this tonight was just a really an insult. And as Sean Teeman said, I will not come back here.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes. Yeah.
Gail Cordy, LW. I hope you all heard that because it's being heard everywhere that shipping will come back and shipping partners will come back. I know Sean Teeman. I can probably go have a chat with him, and I would love for Doug Parsons to meet with him.
Oh, absolutely.
And in fact, a lot of work needs to be done for shipping, for revenue, for the port, to put the international terminal back on the map, to be international terminal. I think there are a lot more jeopardies out there. I think you have dredging jeopardies. I think there's all kinds of things. I know David Jinks, myself, there's a gentleman here, Paul's. I think that whole package up there is a package. I think the halls can contribute a whole lot to the port report's ability to get into the business. I think that once everybody's needs are understood, Stephen Brothers, the fishing boats, somebody like Gary needs to be there representing small guys in town as well. And I think that, Shipper needs to be there. And I think, Doug, you need to put that meeting together, and you need to get everybody in the same room. And you need to hear, first of all, what everybody needs. And then you can start thinking about, okay, how can I make a
out-of-the-box ideas?
How can I build this box so it fits everybody's shoes? And that's going to be important. You need to get everybody in the same room, and you've heard here tonight, it's going to be difficult. I will try to help you if I can, but the message is out there in the shipping industry. Look in the World newspaper, and you'll see, type in Sauce Brothers expands. There's an article in the World newspaper in Tuesday about their expansion down there. Caitlin Sauce talks about the Port of Newfoundland there. Aaron Bretz is quoted in that article. You will get the message that's being sent to shippers by the Port of Newfoundland. It's bad news. And I think that's why you were met the way you were in Salem, too. It's bad news. There's work that needs to be done. There's anybody in this room, including the fishing fleet, that doesn't want to do that work. So let us know where we need to be. We'll be there. Let's get this thing put back to work. Let's create family wage jobs. Let's create revenue from the port so we can take pressure off the rest of the users. Jeff, a lot of your numbers are sideways, backwards. You didn't quote the facts. You said the port can't make any money. You threw away a $2 million profit when they stuck a shovel in the ground. You didn't factor that into how much money the port makes. You would have been building a $6.5 million infrastructure that the port has absolutely no way to pay for, no use. It's a useless piece of ground. I mean, you can't even ask there, you can't fix a net on it. It's a junk pile. Unfortunately, people before you all made it a junk pile, but it is a junk pile, and it needs to be cleaned up and put to use. It needs to be worked with Evan Hall, Ronnie Zink. Everybody needs to work together. That piece of property needs to become one big piece of property. I think the Halls are willing to work with shipping. They're willing to work with fishing. They're looking for a use for their property. They've got a hell of an asset up there that they want to start making a return on. So let's put it to work for everybody. Let's put it to work for David and his folks. Let's put it to work for Gary and his folks. Let's put Longshore people back to work. Let's make the Halls some money. Let's get a partner like Keevan back in here that can be a benefit to this community and create family wage jobs. And let's get Hampton's lumber going across our dock because he's been here bitching about logs. So let's not ship logs. Let's ship lumber. Thank you.
Okay.
Sure.
No. Anybody else? Public comment? Yes, Heather. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I miss something? Okay.
She can talk first.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to scan this room. Go ahead.
Heather Mann, MTC. I think that, Yale twice has talked about giving back $2 million, but you leave out the fact that you would have gone in debt $4.5 million to take that $2 million. And I'll tell you what a Tiger Grant does by you. You know that bridge that collapsed in Florida at the university? That was paid for by a Tiger Grant. So don't...
So that's the Tiger Grant's fault, the bridge fell down?
No, what I'm saying, just because Tiger offers you money does not mean that you have to take it under false pretenses. The numbers aren't... Gail, I listen to you. Why don't you be quiet and listen to me, please?
Okay.
The numbers that you looked at that were produced came from the general manager. He was the one that did the numbers. We didn't put those there. That was Kevin that put those together based on conversations with Sylvan. Everything I've heard about Teban has been good. I know that they're a good company. I researched them. David Jakes has gone back with them. I know they're a good company. There were issues there. So to say that somehow we screwed up because we gave back $2 million, leaving out the fact that we would have gone into debt $4.5 million and not made any money, measurable money, probably for 8 to 10 years, that's significant. So I think when we have these conversations, a lot of us do it one-sided. We need to do it both ways. I agree with getting everybody together. I'm not against that. I agree with what Stuart suggested. We tried to do that starting last year, but nobody wanted to hear it. Kevin didn't want to hear what we had to say. He wouldn't get us together with the shippers. He wouldn't get the fishermen together. Instead, he tries to ram a plan down our throat after the fact. That doesn't work. We all have to be at the table from the beginning talking about it. And revenue at the terminal, the boats that I work for, they use it, and the shrimpers and the crabbers. The revenue up there has increased by over 50% in the last 4 years, and the trajectory is to keep going. I told Kevin, and I said it to the commission, we're willing to pay more up there. We understand that. Using Port Dock 5 and 7 fishermen as a scapegoat, saying, oh, these poor guys, how they can't, they're having to cover you because you won't bring shipping. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. That's not fair. We're willing to pay more. And I think it's disingenuous what you're pushing me on. That's all I
No,
got.
not at all.
Okay. You, sir. Yes.
Concur. So thank you for this evening. Kind of interesting. I sat on some committees, so it's a little bit different format. But in the testimony before, I believe that the committee to look at one of the terminals is important. We also got to look at what the terminal brings to the area, not just Newport, and what's going on and what that commitment is, because Lincoln County's joined together. There was a lady talking about tuna boats, and yeah, you're more attractive than Newport. You don't want them to go to Astoria, you don't want them to go to Coos-Bay, you want them to come here. Same with maintenance and repairs. Since the terminals has got redone, and we get more than 2 boats against the dock, you got a lot more bicycle seafood to bring boats in, and other people bring boats in. So we don't know if this the lift up there has brought a lot more. Go up there today and look at it, or look at the projects that's been done since they've done put that in. It all ties to the ship terminal, it all ties to the port, and that's important. Everybody's using, sorry, for the hulls for what's going to be on. But truthfully, the Vanguard's on its way right here, right now. It's going to Newport, and it's going to go, and I'll allow it the first time in Toledo. It's not going to Fred Walls, which generally goes to Fred Walls, and then comes to Fred Walls, and it's flipped that around. So you're competing up and down the coast for all of this business. Logs would have been great. I would like to see fishermen sit down, and so there wasn't a crossover. I kind of fished a lot out of that story and see how that all works. And I think it could have been rearranged, and that's fine. I respect if people will pull down, don't want to do that. But there's other deals, whether there's buildings down there and we have sheds and you rent out sheds for income. Whether it's, I look in Kodiak where I see the ships come in with containers, and I see Samson tugging barge out there with either logs or it being on a small footprint. And so there's other things. We're not going to compete with Coos Bay. We're not going to compete with Astoria. We should be able to find a niche to make everything work, whether it's shipping or whether it's some other thing. The one complaint I had looking at this, well, a couple of them is, I was looking at $42 million, I think it was, for fixing repairs. I think that's pie in the sky. I mean, that's like my wife going shopping and she wants it all. Well, what do you really need? Is you need a pair of shoes? Okay, let's sit down and what do we need to do this year? Is it Fort Dodge 5? Not getting out, let's figure out how to repair that. Look at the 5-year plan and the long term and not just put something that's not realistic out. The other thing is we talk about mortgage, and I'm paying mortgage that's the ship thermals. The same price, full price, and not being able to plug in as a guy can plug in. So basically, I consider hot mortgage where you can plug in our generators. Our hot mortgage where I got our generators, I'm playing the same thing because you don't have a facility even yet. They have all the boats out there. We're going to be tied 2 and 3 deep, and there's not enough receptacles. You can't get enough leads. Those pilings that are there for ships really screw up tying boats. You get tied another couple boats if they weren't there to stick out, so you're not getting tied between them. So there's some issues here even now where I think that we could be fixed or helped us. But those are just what I listened to tonight. I want to throw out there. I really appreciate you guys serving and taking time because I sit on the North Pacific Advisory Panel up there, and it's a thankless job. So I really appreciate what you're doing.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, God. My eyes are blurry.
I started my earlier comment referring to the gentleman that came from New Mexico where they don't have ties. And I can see that he's a little bunched up about that.
I apologize. That was improper for me to say something in that forum. I should have spoken to you after we got outside.
Okay.
I guess, from my point of view, I was been here a long time. And like Joe Rock said, I've worn out several managers myself. And when I see somebody come in and propose that $22 parking fee should go to $700 a year or $500 semi-annually, that was the first rendition that I was told about. When I hear mortgage rates that are going to go from $44 a foot to $140 something a foot, that was the first, to get the impression that whoever it was that's coming from New Mexico maybe isn't really well tuned in our community and what's going to fly here. So if I upset somebody with a tight remark, then I apologize for that. But
well,
we need to get together on this.
I'd be happy to talk to you outside of this forum.
Okay.
Priscilla,
Thank you.
Could I hear
Priscilla?
Patricia? Sorry. Did I say that? It's a long night. Just a quick thing. There's a couple of real hopeful things, too. Yesterday, I did speak with Paul on the phone, and we discussed some possibilities that I hope the door could be open. And last night, Evan was kind enough to come in and meet with me for a couple hours in my office.
Good.
So things are moving along, hopefully. I'm still very optimistic.
Okay, good. All right, we need to move on. Nobody else public comment? Okay. Calendar of future considerations. So we have the Loyalty Days Carnival, May 3rd through the 6th. We have the first Budget Committee meeting, 6 p.m. on May 8th. The second Budget Committee meeting, May 15th. Regular commission meeting has been changed from May 24th to May 29th, so you need to make sure you mark that on your calendars. Newport Marathon, June 1st. Public hearing and adopt the budget resolution on June 26th. Regular commission meeting, June 26th, 2018, will be done jointly in that time. No other business? We are adjourned. Thank you.
9:24 p.m.